Hello everyone and welcome back to Dreams, Memes and Veggie Supremes for episode 10. So we're officially into double digits now. Very exciting, it's been an awesome experience, so thank you to everyone who's been along for the ride thus far, and perhaps those of you who have just jumped on board. And what a way to enter double digits, because we've got an amazing guest today for you. In fact, this marks our first guest appearance on the show. His name is Michael Dello-Iacovo, and Michael has a very impressive resume. We cover this in the podcast ahead, but just to give you a bit of a rundown here, he's a hardcore scientist with a background in geophysics. So he is actually currently doing his PhD in the use of geophysics for space science and exploration. That's not a joke. He's involved with the fantastic organisation Effective Altruism and was previously the CEO of Effective Altruism Australia. For those of you who don't know, Effective Altruism is a not-for-profit. Obviously talking about the organisation here, not just the concept of effective altruism. Essentially, they work with charities that have been evaluated to be implementing the most transparent, cost-effective and evidence-based programs, saving and improving lives. Michael has fairly recently joined the Animal Justice Party and is actually running in the New South Wales state election for the city of Heffron. Among these things and others, he also runs a fantastic podcast called Morality is Hard. I would definitely encourage you to get onto that. I'll leave any relevant links below. Now, we cover a multitude of things in this podcast. The main discussion we kind of have towards the end of the podcast is, are vegans crazy? And we essentially cover some of the ways in which vegans take part in activism and essentially spread the message in general. We also touch on pseudoscience, anti-vaxxers, and the anti-vax movement, notably what's currently happening with Byron Bay. But just another quick footnote before we jump into this podcast. This was recorded just after Christmas on the 28th of December. Although all of the information here is widely applicable, we do cover some issues that were highly relevant at the time. For example, there's a lot of stories being ran at the time about a child with rickets who was brought up vegan. Although this stuff always comes up, just keeping in mind that the exact news stories that we were referring to then were relevant to around late December. Alright, that's enough of me blabbering on. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. So welcome to Dreams, Memes, Veggie Supremes. We're here with a guest, Michael Dello-Iacovo. Did I get the pronunciation?
Iacovo, close.
Iacovo. Yeah, that's it. That's it. We've got Michael on here to speak about Are Vegans Crazy? But before that, we want to speak about pretty much Michael and what you're up to at the moment. So Michael, tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me, but great to be here. Big fan of the podcast. My background, I guess, we'll start there, is science mostly, so geoscience. I did a Bachelor of Science in Geophysics. Worked as a geophysicist for a few years in Adelaide and then moved to University of New South Wales in Sydney to do my PhD, which I'm now halfway through, and I'm looking at use of geophysics for space science and space exploration. Wow. So mostly doing like lab work and computer modelling on how like different geophysical techniques would work in space, mostly looking at how seismic would work on Moon, Mars and asteroids.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah, so then I've also got a bit of background in effective altruism, which I think you guys might have mentioned before. Yep. So I started the Adelaide chapter a number of years ago when I was still living here, and then been involved with the Sydney group, was running Effective Altruism Australia for a little bit, and then now I guess just more like I have my blog and I'm a bit more casually involved these days with Effective Altruism. But then most recently I've been involved with the Animal Justice Party. So I joined the state committee for the party about 4 months ago. And
fresh,
and running in the state election next year in New South Wales for the Animal Justice Party in the city of Heffron.
That's so good.
Yeah, very exciting, and I think that's a good introduction.
Yeah, how has that been going so far with the AJP?
Good, really good, and I've been enjoying pretty much everything about it so far. I mean, I've always sort of wondered whether I like a career in politics one day might be for me, and I mean, this was just for the most part, a good test for me to see whether I do like it, and it turns out so far I'm enjoying it.
Indication it's going well so far.
Yeah. So I like meeting people and talking to people and getting out in the street. So it's been really good so far.
Well, you surely seem very friendly. I'm sure. I'm sure the residents of
Heffron is the electorate.
They'll love you, mate. They'll love you.
Oh, thanks.
So you've got a lot on your plate at the moment. So you're doing quite a lot of things. How are you managing all that? So has AJP taken up most of your time recently?
Recently, yes, it is. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, my PhD is still full time.
Yeah, wow.
So it's been a bit tricky, but I have been considering taking a trimester off from my PhD to deferring that for a trimester to focus on like the election.
Yeah.
And then we've got the federal election immediately after the state election. So it's going to be busy in New South Wales with that. So I think, to be fair on my supervisor in the university, probably, and they've said I can take time off. So, it has been a bit tricky managing that. And I think I'll do that to help out with that.
Awesome. And obviously you're a vegan.
Yes.
Yeah, just like us too.
Very good.
So how
joining the club?
Yeah, joining the club. How long have you been vegan for?
4 years. Well, yeah, about 4 years now.
Oh, about the same as us.
Oh, okay, cool.
Is there much of a story behind that, or is there a little story about how you got into it?
A little bit. So when I started my undergrad in 2010, my best friend that I met on my first day became my best friend, Mile Taran. He was the first vegan I'd ever met. And I didn't really know, I actually don't think I knew what the word meant until I met him. I knew what vegetarian was. And so I'd always ask him a lot of questions like, why do you do this? And he would mostly he talked about all the reasons, but mostly environmental, I think, was the biggest thing for him. And eventually he convinced me, and I was learning more about climate change. I did climate change as an elective at university, and I was like, wow, this is a big problem.
Here's a big solution.
And then I was like, how is no one talking about animal agriculture? Because I read the part of the UN Livestock's Long Shadow report. And was just kind of blown away. And I thought, I can't just not try. So I challenged myself to be vegetarian for a week and never stopped. And then 2 years later, I challenged myself to be vegan and never stopped. So that was 4 years ago, and
mate.
That's awesome.
And the Livestock's Long Shadow, that was quite a conservative estimate of greenhouse gas emissions, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah, it is. I mean, even to this day, still like a hotly contested. The percentage of how much livestock industry, in terms of like carbon equivalent emissions, has, and it depends, I guess. The biggest thing that I think people seem to not take into account when they talk about the different estimates is it really does depend on how you do the accounting, the carbon accounting. So so one way of doing it is livestock is one sector, and then say transport is a completely separate sector. But in my opinion, that's not the best way to do it, because a lot of transport is used for livestock industry, and then also
that's
things
actually
like
not grouped together. So it's
I've never actually thought about that.
Wow.
And so I think for what individuals should care about, which is like what action should we take to have the biggest impact, or what policies should we support to have the biggest impact. I think that is the better way to actually look at the accounting, to look at like per like product that we consume, how much energy is being used, rather than like keeping the keeping the transport and keeping the energy use completely separate, and which I don't think is accurate.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite funny. I saw a study. I was doing greenhouse gas emissions from diet as one of my I think it was just an assignment in my food systems topic, and I found a very interesting paper that actually broke it down, CO2 per food item.
Right. Yeah.
And this was actually sponsored by MLA. This study that I found.
MLA.
Meat and Livestock Australia. And it was quite funny because marginally that destroyed everything was meat products, animal products. Greenhouse gas emissions per gram of product. But in their conclusions, they put confectionery products, even though they are very high. They put confectionery products as a main source that people could eliminate because they saw meat as being necessary, and discretionary foods as not. And so, but they completely failed to mention that the greatest contributor was animal products.
It's an interesting conclusion by a study funded by.
But you can't hide the results. Simple as that. You can't hide the results. They were there. So, no, that's awesome. Good on you, mate. We've been both vegan for about 4 years, I reckon. It's the same. So, how have you found that so far? Have you found any negatives or positives?
There's been ups and downs the whole way through. When I first started, this was just before I first started my first full-time job. When I first went vegan, I should say. And there was some. I mean, it was a bit like people would sometimes crack jokes, and like it wasn't that bad. I've heard stories of people who have had really bad situations, and it was just kind of like microaggressions isn't quite the right word, but like just little things, and they kind of build up over time. Like little jokes, like for planning the Christmas barbecue, like team lunch thing. We'll just get Michael a salad, haha. Everyone has a bit of a laugh at that. And you
just become a bit of a punching bag for some people.
And it's like it just builds up over time. So that was a bit tough. I on the other, like a complete opposite, the success I had recently, I was talking to my supervisor and one of his other students, my PhD supervisor, and the other student was saying something like, "Oh, why do you do that? Like, haha, meat tastes so good," or something like that. And
solid arguments, yeah.
like trying to be a bit joking about it. And then my supervisor's like, "No, well, he's right." My supervisor's not vegan, by the way. But we've talked about it a bit. And he's like, "Well, he's right. Actually, we shouldn't be eating animals." And then just changes the topic.
That is a small win.
So I was like, "Oh wow, that's like pretty good." And my parents as well, who were initially kind of against me being vegan, and we had some debates, a lot of debates about that, but that now recently I've just become basically mostly vegetarian and I'm trying to be vegan. That's
awesome.
a huge win.
Yeah, that's one of my big goals, sub goals anyway, is to get my parents on board. Because exactly like you, they got to a stage now where I eat with them 3 times a week, vegan, at the dinner table. And my mum's pretty much on her way, and she's actually said a New Year's resolution might be to go vegan for a month. I told you that actually, which is really, really cool to see. And I think that's the way it happens. I think people are concerned initially about your well-being because you're making such a big change. So a lot of the time it comes from a place of love, but then, I mean, if, like you said, you're constantly slipping into those little digs all the time, constantly, sometimes it's hard to think that they've got your best interest in mind. And you've started training recently as well, whilst being on a vegan diet?
Yes, that's right. Yep. So I've started, I got my first gym membership ever 4 months ago.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Thanks. So I've been going to my uni gym. It's been going pretty well so far, pretty happy. I've put on 4 kilos in that time, which hopefully is like
that's
small
great.
muscle and not that, touch wood. But it's been good. I'm enjoying it.
It's been so good.
Never really worked out properly before. I used to do a little bit of CrossFit, and I have I used to run and cycle a lot. But in terms of actually gym, it's all very new to me.
So mostly the cardio background. Now moving into the better stuff.
The better stuff. But we're about anyway.
Not biased.
That's awesome. And have you found it supplemented? Your vegan diet supplemented that quite well so far? I was lost.
I'm not sure. I mean, I don't have anything I didn't work out before, so it's hard to compare. But I have a rough sense of how much protein I need, and I kind of roughly, I don't probably track it, but I roughly track the protein that I get per day, and it's I've been pleasantly surprised that even without protein shakes, I've been able to meet that most days. So
that's awesome.
It's good, and it's good to. One of my friends is a big bodybuilder and also very skeptical of veganism, mostly for health and bodybuilding reasons. So that was part of the motivation, I'll prove him wrong or something, but. So he was pleasantly surprised, and he's like, "Oh, you can actually get enough protein." And I told him that. So
it's a good one. That's great.
Has your diet changed at all since you started training, or is it still about the same?
I've mostly just been eating more. I think I'd say. I don't think the proportion of anything has changed so much, but I've definitely been eating more. And sometimes forcing myself to eat a little bit more, but
you do when you're doing the bulk.
Yeah.
So to speak. I mean, 4 kilos in 4 months. That's fantastic.
That's
progress.
nice and steady as well.
It was a very low starting point. So.
That's how it happens.
Yeah.
Some people are just genetically gifted and they can just pack it on. But people like myself just find it so hard to put on any muscle, and those first 2 years were a grind, to put any muscle on whatsoever. So. Yeah, that's awesome. I guess we just want to speak about, before we move on to a few topics, just a broader look at some of the issues that you're focusing on. I know you're obviously focusing on veganism, especially with being a part of the AJP, but any other sub-issues that you're currently tackling at the moment, or any contemporary issues?
I guess coming at it from an effective altruism perspective, I'm very interested in how everyone can kind of maximize their impact. And so this idea of we all have limited time and resources, so how do we use those time and resources as best as we can? So looking at different charities and how effective different charities are, so people know where to give their well-meaning support to have the most impact. Other stuff, so my PhD is very technical, but I'm also, where I try and delve into a bit more of the ethical implications of space exploration, which is part of my motivation for doing the PhD. So things like future of life, how we can, if we do colonize other planets, A, how likely is that? B, how do we do that in the way to best maximize future flourishing, or should we even be colonizing future planets? I think a lot of people assume yes, definitely, but I think there are some reasons why one might be hesitant about that. So
I think everyone kind of fantasizes it over the sci-fi kind of. They're just like, yep, what's gonna go wrong there?
Yeah. So that's another big area I'm interested in. And then I've got a lot of I guess just smaller passions. So I do street outreach for veganism in Sydney. Yeah. So I do the Cube of Truth, if you've heard of that. Where,
it's everywhere at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty big. I think Adelaide has a chapter as well. But so and then just whatever topic happens to catch my interest sometimes, which is not necessarily the best way to strategize it, but some stuff happened. I think maybe you guys will talk about this later, but some stuff happened with vaccination in New South Wales recently, which kind of rustled my jimmies and got me upset. So
definitely. I definitely want to speak about that next. But before that, you've been very modest, and you haven't said something that you do, and that I find absolutely admirable. You donate every dollar over $45,000 income. Is that
that's
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well done. And what was the I know the motivator behind that, but from your words?
Yeah. So when I first, kind of even before actually, when I first found out about Effective Altruism, which was 4 years ago, I was wanting to, a lot of what I wanted to do with my money was to help others. And so when I found out about Effective Altruism, it was nice because I guess I felt like I wasn't this crazy lone person in my views. Like there were other people who were setting aside a portion of their money to give to good causes. And so when I found out there were people who would donate 10%, which is the Giving What We Can pledge, of 10% of their income per year. So I started doing that. And then I found out about some people who had taken, I guess, bigger pledges. So Toby Ord, who is he's an Australian, but now I think a philosophy professor in Oxford. Can't remember the exact amount, but it was something like he has pledged to give everything he earns over £30,000 every year.
Wow, yeah.
Don't know what the conversion rate is at the moment, but roughly the same. So I thought, if he can do it, and I mean he is still extremely happy, and he says this brings him more happiness than most of the other things that he could spend the money on, and his quality of life is still good. So I thought, I wanted to do that, and the reason I guess I made it, the reason I talk about it and made it a bit more public is I was also convinced by something that Rob Wiblin said, who he said in some ways being public about your donations is, whilst people think donations are something you should keep private, not really talk about for fear of moral grandstanding or something. In some ways, being public about it is more selfless because you encourage other people to do the same. You make it more normal to donate, number one, and also you make it more normal to talk about donations. And I think that's important because it should be something we can talk about, and I think it's healthy to talk about.
It's inspirational to listen to as well.
It really is. I mean, you got me interested in it.
Cool.
I don't think I'm anywhere near the medium weight. when I
One of these days.
I should say at the moment I'm earning less than $45,000 a year because I'm on a PhD stipend. But
of course.
But that's a pledge I intend to keep for my life.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, well done, mate. Yeah, very admirable. And I hate that. I mean, I hope you haven't got any stick for putting it publicly.
A little bit, but it's...
Have you really? That's frustrating.
What kind of things do people say?
So especially recently, with my candidacy for the state election next year, some people have said something like, these are internet comments which you
shouldn't give attention to.
But people say things like, he's doing it to help him get elected.
Virtual signaling kind of.
Stuff like that, or he's clearly a trust fund baby. If he's doing that, and I mean, I have had a fairly privileged upbringing, but
that just frustrates me. I mean, you're doing something good. Shouldn't people just be happy about that? I mean, if I'm the type of person, I'll put it out there, I'm not very modest. If I do something good or help someone, I want to spread the word. Not to be I did this, but more to be, look at this good thing I did. I'm proud about this. I want to share this with people.
And I think that's the way it should
inspire people. And that's the best way of doing it. I guess that's meeting in the middle of between, not saying a word and then also just shouting from the rooftop saying, look how good I am. Yeah, that's great.
Or just by talking to you and listening to you talk, you can tell that those comments aren't true straight away.
I know. You just
Hopefully, whoever wrote that listens to this. And
I hope so. Yeah.
Don't forget to get it out of it. Yeah. I mean, it was good. It would have been a good segue before, but we kind of skipped past it. But one thing we definitely wanted to speak about today was with your recent focus on the Byron Bay vaccinations and more broadly pseudoscience.
Yeah,
something we're passionate about tackling. So what kind of got your attention with this issue?
Yeah, I think I just read a news article and it said something to the effect of so Simon Richardson is the mayor of Byron Shire Council, where Byron Bay is, and so Byron Shire has been interesting in the Australian context with vaccination because it's for a while now had the lowest vaccination rate in Australia. Not sure why or how that came about initially, but it's sort of built on itself a little bit. So they've had some. I think in the last 10 or so years, they've had 2 babies die of whooping cough, which. Essentially, it's a vaccination that babies generally aren't able to get themselves. So they rely on everyone else in the community to be immune to it through vaccination to keep them safe. But because vaccination rates are so low, they've kind of gotten past that herd immunity point, and some babies are being affected by it. And unfortunately, 2 babies have died recently. So what this article was talking about was Simon Richardson, the mayor of Byron Shire, has stood by. So there was a council decision. I think it was a vote of 5-3 to allow various like misinformation groups, anti-vax groups, to screen anti-vaccination documentaries using council venues. So
pretty much everywhere else says no, but then I read that one.
So I don't actually know what what his vote personally was, but he has stood by the council's decision on that, and so I first emailed him about this saying, is this for real? Come on, you can't like please, you have a responsibility as a council to not promote misinformation and dangerous misinformation at that, and in not really polite words, he told me to get lost, and so I thought, well, all right, you've made an enemy. So my friend and I, we started a petition. And we shared that around, and I then contacted, springboarding off of that petition, I contacted some state New South Wales politicians, and then just recently we had a nice win of Brad Hazzard, who is I think the Minister for Health, although I might be mistaken. He has gotten back to me and said he spoke to the Simon Richardson and has asked them to stop allowing those to be screened in the interest of public safety.
Good.
So hopefully that translates to some action and
change. I was actually initially on the fence with this vaccination because I've got quite a strong belief in freedom of speech, but I didn't realise that they were council sponsored, not council sponsored, but council owned and council run venues. So then the responsibility does definitely fall on them. So I didn't realise that, because that's a point I was going to bring up. How do you think that falls in with freedom of speech and all of that?
And I can speak to that a little bit. I'm a believer of free speech, and free speech is a tricky one because you can't shut down some free speech and not others, because it's at the end of the day, someone's going to make that decision, usually the government, and I don't necessarily want the government to be making decisions about what should be allowed to be said and what shouldn't. But having said that, I think if it is something that is dangerous, if it's free speech that is actively dangerous, then I think there is a justification for shutting that down.
The line for me is when it starts causing harm.
Definitely.
Past that point, it's not very defensible.
One of the reasons why I can't shout a fire in a theatre or bomb in an airport makes sense. So I completely agree, and further strengthened by the point that this is the actual council's venues that they're doing this with. It makes it quite disgusting, actually, doesn't it?
I was reading about it just before. I was binge reading all these articles just to get ready for this specific topic. It's really, really weird hearing the mothers in the areas. It sounds almost like a cult of people that are just they're scared to even vaccinate their kids for peer pressure's sake. It's really horrible to even read about.
And that's why I think it is feeding off of itself, because the council, they have to get voted in again, and so they have to kind of appeal to the people living in the area, and because everyone's now anti-vax, well, not everyone, a lot of people there are anti-vaccination, and so the council is anti-vax, generally speaking, and then it all just feeds off each other, and even the social pressure. Like if you're if all of your local neighbours are anti-vax and you're not, and they're pressuring you to be so, then like even a strong-willed person might change their mind about that.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely would be hard with all that pressure around to,
Funnily enough, I saw Instagram had Chris Hemsworth on, and they had him do a little write-up about how good Byron Bay is. And one of the things he in his quote was quoting how good the health culture is there and the health community. And then as soon as I saw that, I thought straight to this, and I was like, is it that good?
I'm sure some of it's fine, but
you're developing a culture where people are anti-vax and mothers are scared to vaccinate their children just for the social stigma and all the rest. That's not a healthy culture.
I read about one case where a baby died of vitamin K deficiency because they didn't get the injection, which that seems like ridiculous to me, since it's not even a vaccine, so you can't even make that argument.
I hadn't heard that. Was that in Byron Bay?
Yeah, I think it was one of the neighbouring. It was still in the Shire, I believe. So it's crazy.
It's awful. Yeah.
Is there any other pseudoscience topics?
Hopefully a bit more upbeat.
Yeah, hopefully a bit more upbeat. That maybe you can make fun of crystals
for a bit,
or the moon cycles. But any other bits of pseudoscience that you're currently tackling with in your personal life, or?
I wouldn't say currently tackling unless you count various aspects of veganism. Yeah. Or opposition to veganism as pseudoscience, which I would, but. I mean, other stuff that has gotten me a bit upset in the past are things like astrology.
Especially
and like I know some people who are into astrology, and I can't understand it.
Is there any gram stat? I know I'm a complete disbeliever, right? But is there anything that could be? I mean, what is the rationale there, at least? Do you even know?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, I'm probably not doing the argument full justice, but it's something like that's what I think. But I like this concept of steel manning, where you try to make the best case for the opposition as you can, or like devil's advocate, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I haven't looked at this for a while, but I think it's like the position of I mean, I think it draws on like some spiritual arguments. I don't think it's like a scientific argument necessarily, but
more metaphysical. Harder to kind of completely debunk, because they just go, "Oh, we'll prove that wrong."
Yeah, but it's like the position of like the stars and planets like affect our lives. Yeah. I can't tell you much more beyond that.
Yeah, that's pretty much my understanding.
It's mostly just confirmation bias, where you say, "Oh, I'm a Gemini. I've looked at this and it says I should be calm," and all these other personality traits which are so vague that anyone could apply.
That's it, and that's the strength of it, because it can apply to almost anyone. Like you can test it. You can read someone, not their like star sign. If someone believes in astrology, read them like, oh, here is the Gemini. Read the star sign for Gemini. So say you're going to read the star sign for Gemini, but it's not. It's like whatever else. And then they say, yeah, that applies to me like most of the time. And then like,
that was a Scorpio.
Just like peel off the sticker. See, it was Scorpio.
And I mean, a real example, one of my friends said, when we were debating about this, she said, once my horoscope for the day said, like you're going to come into a lot of money soon, and then like she got a big tip that night at work. I was like,
at $20. How big are we talking?
What kind of duration is soon? If it said today, I'd be a bit more impressed.
That's a good point. I don't know.
Soon could be like a few months.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
And probably most people would come into some money in the next few months.
Yeah. And I think it forces people. One of the only good things it does is, because I always against steel manning it. One of the only good things it does is I think it makes more people more in the moment and more alert as to what's happening.
Yeah.
So say for example, you'll have a great week. You know.
Wow, I'm having a great week.
Yeah, it's going to actually
ignoring the negatives.
Yeah, it's going to make them have feelings of more well-being and all the rest.
That's true.
But I mean, it's the case of I love this argument with the scenario. Anyway, it's not an argument. A porcupine can't fire out its quills, but teaching kids to do so keeps kids away from porcupines. It's a good thing, you know. A kid won't go up and touch the porcupine, but it's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
So is it justified? I think there's a really good argument to be had there. But I would always argue that you still shouldn't lie about about that.
Yeah.
You should just
Just
say
say,
you don't need
go
to
near the
just,
porcupine.
yeah, just don't go near the porcupine. You don't need to put a lion.
Just say have a good week. Don't say you're gonna have a good week because Saturn said so.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, you can get that kind of like presentness and mindfulness, right? Like, well, by mindfulness or meditation, which like do have some grounding behind them. So
Yeah,
you can get the good part without the weird part.
And this is what I hate about how spirituality has always been like overtaken by this, the New Age movement, and it's just thrown in crystals and horoscopes and astrology. When we've got this great concept, this foolproof concept of meditation and mindfulness, which can really be transformative to someone's lives. But the thing is, it's got all that crap thrown in there, so most people discredit it.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame because we have a focus on that too, especially with Motive. I always speak to my clients about mindfulness and meditation, and it's really powerful, but the message is being taken away because of people like this. And it's a shame.
Yeah. You might have heard of this already, but there's a website I really like called What's the Harm? Have you seen that?
Oh, I've heard of that, yeah.
It tries to document, like quantify the harm of different forms of pseudoscience, like astrology, for example. Like, where is this actually? So a lot of people say, oh, well, it's just harmless fun, but they document like, what examples of are there of this actually like causing monetary or like physical harm to people.
Wow.
So it's good. Yeah. I mean, it's a bit anecdotal, but it's just good to be able to point to examples.
Yeah.
Like, here's actually where it has caused some harm.
Where it has caused some harm. Yeah, because I was having this exact argument yesterday with my sister who's delving into this territory with crystals.
Any updates?
No updates yet. Maybe in the next podcast. And she's toying around with crystals and how they affect her meditation. I didn't really press her too much because I just thought straight away, it's harmless fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I would be really interested to know. I mean, maybe someone's poked themselves on a crystal or something. What the harm could be there, because I feel as though
spend all your money on quartzite.
I'm a geologist. I might anyway.
Yeah, that's funny because I've got a few salt, those Himalayan salt rock lamps, but not because of the crazy claims, just because they look cool. I would do the same with like quartzite or something.
Yeah, that's what he says, but he actually goes when he's like, I didn't mean it. Give me the good energy. Keep my vibrations in order.
Well, I do have a big like rock and crystal collection at home, but for different reasons.
I guess we would love to move on to the topic of are vegans crazy? That might sound a bit inflammatory, and that's because it is. We want views. Really what we want to speak about is activism and when it goes too far, and the best forms of activism. I know you're quite what would you say the word would be tailored, active and that's the word I was actually throwing up. Active with activism,
active activist.
You're an active activist, so I mean, we would love to hear about from your opinion what the best forms of activism would be, specifically in the vegan movement.
So where possible, I like to draw on evidence, but it's unfortunate with activism that there's actually not much evidence on like which forms of activism are better. There's very, very little. So there's a good organization called Animal Charity Evaluators, which try to collate like the little evidence that there is, and they've looked more at things like what like large organizations can do, or charities, so like leafleting programs, or like corporate outreach, which is where you go to like a company and say like ask them to get more vegan options, or change something about their practice. And I think so there's a bit of evidence behind that, and it looks quite effective behind those like kind of bigger things. But for things like individual activism, or so I mean, you could, to try and think of like the different categories, there would be like individual kind of one-on-one style activism where you go and talk to people, you might hand them leaflets or something. There's direct activism, or what they call like direct action, which is where like you might go into a supermarket and like show like footage of animal farming, or like protest with say chant stuff or something. And then I think the other like major category would be like going in and shutting down a slaughterhouse or shutting down an animal farm, where like you go in, and this has been happening a lot in Australia. Recently, especially like Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, where they go into like a slaughterhouse or an animal farm, and they will like they'll go in there. I mean, they're trespassing; it's illegal, but they go in and they show like footage of what actually happens in there, which is like very hard. We have like some ag gag laws that make it hard to like actually show legally what's going on in there, even when there are like animal welfare like violations. And they sometimes will go in, and then I think there's open rescue, which is where they will sneak in, but they'll like take animals and rescue them. And it's really hard to say, so I always try and draw back to like, what's my metric? And for me as a utilitarian, it's less suffering, more well-being is good.
Yeah.
So I always try and bring it back to like, how does this translate to less animal suffering? How does this translate to like better animal lives or something? Or like less animals farmed, let's say. And so for things like talking to people on the street, there is like a pretty clear link, I think, for that. And whilst there's no like, I'm hoping that now that Anonymous for the Voices who do the Cube of Truth are really big, I'm hoping they'll spend a bit of time to like try and quantify their impact.
Yeah,
because they do take data, don't they?
A little bit, yeah.
They
so
take, how many engagements they've had.
So the way it works, just for any of your viewers who might not have heard, is the people stand in a square and they hold TVs or laptops or something with footage of animal farming. So like the Australians will show footage of Australian animal farming. And when people stop to watch and see what's happening, it'd be like in a public mall or some public space. And this is legal. They always have like permits and where necessary to do that. So, and then an outreach will go up and say, talk to them about it. And then the goal is to try and convince them to try Challenge 22, which is where you try being vegan for 22 days. And they sign up to a website, you give them a flyer. And so the main measure they use is how many people say that they will try being vegan for 22 days, which is better than nothing. But it's hard. It's still hard to say like, how many people stay, like how many people actually do that challenge. Like maybe not. Maybe
how many
like
aren't just
maybe
saying,
people aren't.
I'll do it just to kind of.
Yeah, or maybe they intend to, but then just don't. Like, and then how many people stay vegan after those 22 days? And those sorts of things are harder to account for.
Yeah.
And then there's some criticism about Cube of Truth where maybe you're like making vegans look crazy, as go back to the theme, like turning people away or something. And then so there's the whole like spectrum of that, all the way through to like direct action or like shutting down a slaughterhouse, and then maybe people think vegans look really crazy. It's hard. It is hard at the moment to like say whether the negative impact of that, if there is one, is having like more of a negative impact than the positive impact. My intuition at the moment is no, because I mean, having done for the Cube of Truth, at least I can speak most to, like having been there, we'll get the very occasional person who gets upset, but for the most part, people were like actually quite happy that we're showing this. Like we get much more like thankful reactions from people, like thank you for showing me this. I had no idea this happens in Australia. A lot of people say, oh, where is this footage from? China or something? Like people just don't know that this happens in Australia. So yeah, that aspect of like peacefully showing the truth, I think is really good. So to go to like the shutting down of a slaughterhouse,
it's
so
the juicy stuff.
The juicy stuff. So I mean, I've never done I've never done a vigil. I hope to do a vigil one day. I've never done a slaughterhouse shutdown though or anything. Many of my friends have, and I've spoken to them about it. So the link, like for me, the link to like my outcomes that I care about would be showing people footage, more footage of like undercover investigations are really good, I think, in particular. But also raising awareness of this issue, getting it like into the news and into people's minds where they otherwise might not normally think about it. Like we live in a society where it is normal to eat animals, and like no one really thinks about it. And I don't know how off topic I'm getting here, but a good example of this kind of phenomenon is one of my friends told me, like in the LGBTIQ kind of movement. When like confronted with someone talking about that, they might maybe, if someone is straight or they might like think someone's shoving it in their face or like being really out about it, and like people, probably media leaders, think about that about vegans as well. But it's not. It's interesting because using that as an example, like these people are also like, I mean, that is who they are, but because they're so unused to being confronted with that. When you meet someone who's just like maybe really casual about it, like even if they're not going out of their way to talk about it, it still feels like it's just because it's so unusual. It's like it's not normal to put that in air quotes, but they like it becomes more of an issue than it otherwise might be because they don't think about it. And so in the same way, like if you go to dinner and someone's like, do you want some meat? And you say no, thank you. Like, oh, why? I'm vegan. Like. That's about as peaceful as you can get, but even that, some people, they'll just like
attack.
And I don't know if there's a good way to get around that. Like, I mean, kind of one of the solutions to that is to just not do anything about it. And I think that's definitely not the right way to go. Like we want to be talking about this. We want people to be thinking about this and confronting them a little bit. So I'm okay with seeming a little bit crazy, because every I mean, you think about every like social movement ever, like they're always seen as crazy at the start. So I'm not too worried about that per se. But then the juicy stuff, as you say, like it's just hard for me to say which one outweighs the other
without the evidence. Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because there is, like you said, there is no evidence, and I totally agree with you. It's hard to actually go off of what there is and what there isn't. So I think it becomes almost like a boxing match of different scenarios that people use, because it is a very hot debated topic in the vegan community, and broader than the vegan community. You know, I think what's getting the attention for the right reasons or not is when people walk into a steak restaurant and they have the signs and they disturb people. Personally, I don't think that, but with no evidence. But I don't want it to go the other way as well, and feel as though these people are going to do this with the justification that, there's no evidence this is doing any harm. And then walk in there with their signs and go, there's no evidence this is actually bad activism. And then the screen.
I would just put just imagine I'm like one of the people sitting there having a nice dinner with a family, then just a bunch of loud people with signs come in, and then you're like, they're all vegans. That would put me like, I don't want to be a vegan if that's what a vegan is, especially because it's still like a small population. That would be one of the only experiences they'd have, and it would definitely be the most memorable one. Would be a bunch of people just barging in. Whereas stuff like the Cube of Truth, that kind of thing's a much better example of an interaction with a vegan and how that can go.
Well, I guess if I'm going to steelman like the direct action, first I'll say like there's been some like social like studies of social science, social movements from the past, and like how they can apply to the vegan movement.
That'd be interesting.
Or animal rights. And so one of the things they say is like, yes, there were like, because people refer to like examples of like in like the like Black civil rights movement in the US, for example, like people did these kind of actions that people would see as like, they like went and did sit-ins and other stuff, and everyone like hated them for doing that because it was not unusual. But then people refer to that today. People refer to that as being like, it doesn't matter that people see them as crazy at first. There's two reasons why I think that's a little bit different. One is that the animal rights is kind of the first movement where the victims are not really voices isn't quite the right word, but like they can't speak up for themselves per se. Like they can't go out and protest for themselves, and so there's a big difference. And also, we're at a point right now where like, I mean, it's interesting. Like most people actually like most people in Australia think that slaughterhouses are bad. Sorry, not slaughterhouses, factory farms are bad. But most people eat from factory farms. But so putting that aside, like only 1% of Australia roughly is vegan, and so like there's 99%, let's say, like don't agree with the core message, which is like animals should be like not like harms at all. Whereas in other civil rights movements, you can argue that like these tactics started to become successful when more of the population actually agree with it. So like something more like 10% of the population, and then you start to get that tipping point, and then those tactics are more effective. I'm not. I mean, I think there's something to that. Again, I'm not sure how much that outweighs the other, and I'm going to be falling back to that a lot. But like, I just don't know is the short answer.
It's hard at the moment. It will only get easier though as more data comes out. And
I hope so. I hope so. To steelman like direct action, and I don't think it's awful, and I like have a lot of respect for what they do. So I mean, there's one argument I heard which I actually kind of agree with is so breaking social norms can sometimes be bad. Like breaking social norms for a good reason can still like sometimes be bad. For sure. But it's so this video, which I kind of agree with parts of, was talking about like it's about like which social norms that you're breaking, and if you're breaking the bad social norms, that's maybe a good thing, even if most people don't agree with them. So the social norm of like eating animals being normal, and people like letting you do that without like speaking up about it. She was arguing, the speaker, I'm sorry I forget her name, but she was arguing that breaking that social norm is good in the long run, because that's a bad social norm, and I thought there is maybe something to that.
Definitely, yeah. It's almost like on a scale of where the tactic used to break that social norm becomes yet again at the detriment of the well-being of just humans who for the most part don't think they're doing anything wrong.
Of course.
there are I think a fringe amount of people who do eat animals and are conscious of all of the consequences, and they've seen the videos and all the rest. But for me, it's like if you could just like choose a form of activism, the cube of truth, everything that comes from that. The only thing you don't have there with the cube of truth is the virality potential. You've got the virality potential of someone going into a steakhouse, and we've seen it lots of times, and that getting viral, which I would again supporting that form of activism. You won't really get with the cube of truth. You'll affect a large volume of people locally, but will it have the virality potential? And it quite simply won't.
Yeah,
and so it's good to know what the impact of that virality would be with something like direct action and going into a place like that. But then it's weird because I don't think I'm actually consistent in my own personal beliefs around this, because although I don't like direct action when people go into restaurants and scream at people who are doing what they're doing, they're eating animals. I like when people go into slaughterhouses and shut them down and show the footage, because I feel as though almost the virality potential of that, and if that does go viral, I reckon it's pretty even. The virality potential of that's pretty even. I feel as though the impact of that video, yet again, I don't have evidence, and it's frustrating, but I feel as though when people see that, they'd be like, oh damn, like they're not just seeing vegans going into a steakhouse shouting at people, they're seeing the dark side of that.
I think someone who isn't vegan would be a lot more favourable to seeing someone shut down a slaughterhouse, which, like you said, most people disagree with, as opposed to a steakhouse, which I think most people think, oh, those cows probably lived in fairyland and had a lovely life.
Yeah. And that is the important difference, I think. Like you're talking to the consumers, and on the other hand, you're talking to the people actually doing the thing. And you can argue like, as a consumer, you are still like as complicit because you are paying for it to happen. For sure. But people don't see it that way, and so I think
it's all about the perception.
This is why I think live export is like the public is so against live export in particular, because it's for most Australians it's not something they actually take part in. And even though the conditions you could argue on a live export ship are just about as bad as like a factory farm in Australia, people are more against that one because they don't have a part in that. And at the end of the day, everyone does want to think that they're a good person.
They're less to blame for that kind of thing.
And I think there's something to that. And so if you focus on kind of the system itself, maybe there's like a good argument to do that. Rather than the individuals.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And when do you reckon we'll see such evidence? Because this is what it's all banking on. We're banking on this evidence that it just isn't
fingers crossed.
I don't know. I hope soon. But I'm a big advocate for like supporting meta organizations, which are like the organizations that do research to like look at the effectiveness of other interventions and stuff, which I think is really important. So hopefully those kind of organizations, because it is more popular to donate to a direct organization, because you can more clearly see the impact that you're having. But I hope there's a bit of a culture shift to being more supportive of the like more meta kind of level organizations, and hopefully once we get more funding for those organizations, they can do more of these studies and really look at like which interventions are most effective, and then we can just scale up the most effective one.
And I saw even though you're on your trip to Adelaide to see your family, you still partook in some activism while you were here regardless. And again, extremely admirable, mate. What did you do while you were here?
So there was a camel race at the Morpheville Racecourse. They used to do it in Adelaide a number of years ago, but they haven't for a while, and I think they brought this back as a once-off. But I think they're hoping to do it once a year, like what do they call it, the Thirsty Camel Cup or something like that. But so we were protesting because like the camels are like they're injured during the race, and they're not necessarily
they're not exactly built for speed, are they?
No, but
you would know, Jack, because
they're not great.
Yeah. But even horses who are, you might argue, like
obviously,
like they still have. I know what you mean there, but like it's particularly bad.
Pushing an animal past its limits won't have happy results for anyone except maybe the winner, the owner of the winner, I should say.
Yeah, so we were there protesting that, and we got we had I think Channel 7 and 9 News film us, but they didn't end up using the segment, unfortunately.
Shame.
Yeah, I got Mum and Dad to record the news, but we went on. But no, I think it was good. Like everyone who drove in saw us. Like a lot of, and we had a sign that said "honk if you're against like animal cruelty." And like so many people honked as they drove past, which is really good to see.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And like a lot of people gave us a thumbs up. I think like horse racing, but then camel racing in particular is like something that not a lot of people really support anyway. So
yeah, I think that'll be one of the first things to phase out. I mean,
I think the more out there you get with like the animals, pretty much, the less support there is. It's like stuff like whaling, just about everyone's against, unless it's in a country where it's normalised, like Japan or Norway and places like that. Over here, you can eat a cow, don't eat elephant. But you can eat a kangaroo here, whereas some other countries that people think that's really weird. It's all that it's just about how distant you are from the.
Definitely. I'm sad you brought up whaling because the Japanese government have just reinstated it, haven't they?
Yeah, so that was interesting. I think I have to read a bit more about that because it seems a bit more complex than it first looks, because they pulled out of the International Whaling Convention and they have been doing scientific whaling near Antarctica. Yeah, I mean, quote unquote. I think it's like been revealed that it wasn't really. It was a bit of a cover up, but they're now no longer doing it in the South Sea or south around Antarctica, and they're doing it instead closer to home in the Northern Hemisphere. But I mean, one like small positive that comes out of that is because Japan is no longer in the IWC and they're no longer whaling in South like Antarctica, they can apparently like just outright ban whaling in around Antarctica now. So I think I'm going off this one article which, if is correct, like there's no more whaling now in the southern hemisphere, and so like this is like a small win to come out of that.
Yeah, definitely.
So hopefully now they just focus on northern hemisphere.
Yeah, at least hopefully for now it's kind of balanced it out.
It's hard to say.
It's hard,
but
yet again, lack of data.
Bane of my existence.
Okay. And one last thing we want to speak about, I guess, with this "Are Vegans Crazy?" I'm loving the other side at the moment. All of the hate on the vegans at the moment. I don't know where it's come from, but especially on vegan pregnancies and vegan toddlers. Have you been seeing a lot of this?
All this stuff about parents not feeding their kids properly, vegan parents not feeding their kids properly.
It's all come out of one single story.
Really?
Is it just the one?
Yeah, there's an Australian vegan couple convicted because their kid, who was being on a vegan diet, had rickets. And now rickets, the main cause of rickets is not enough vitamin D. And that doesn't really have much to do with diet. That's like sunlight mostly. So
that's definitely right.
Like, and the whole thing is just kind of blown up, and it's like as you guys know, like it's not like there are no non-vegan parents who have malnourished kids. It's just the vegans when it happens to a vegan couple. I mean, it's bad parenting. It's not veganism. Let's be real. Like when it happens with a vegan, like that breaks news because that's
a slam
popular.
page.
Yeah,
it just gets you a lot of clicks.
It's like
for sure.
It's like when the vegan mountain climber died on Everest a few years ago, and everyone was talking about that. But how many mountain climbers die every year, and no one hears about it in Everest alone? Like just so many, and
that was actually, I used the word discrimination, like not very loosely here, but like that's like one of the only instances I've seen. Pretty clear discrimination in the media. I mean, because like yet again to steelman the argument with the kid, veganism is becoming a bit overridden with the pseudoscience. And I mean, if you just go on any of the vegan pages, and we're both part of, I know we all are here. There's a lot of crap. There's a lot of crap. And I think more vegan, yet again, like a data, but I think more vegans are likely to adopt beliefs such as that than the general public. And so, the Steelman argument there would be: is there high proportions of parents who are giving their children alternate, like from not the Australian dietary guidelines, because vegan diet can fit within the Australian dietary guidelines. It's right there in your face. It's also there from the largest nutrition bodies across the globe. But are they actually just straying completely from the guidelines because it fits in with their alternative worldview? Veganism being a part of that. That would be interesting to know, and that's the Steelman I would draw there. But yet again, like you said, rickets is caused mainly by vitamin D. There's a bit of a calcium role there, but not as significant. But I would love to have seen what they were actually doing at this kid. I mean, they're locked inside or something.
I don't know, but I mean, it sounds like obviously the child was mistreated and like completely against that. Like there's no redeeming those two parents, but to like lump all of veganism under that just because they happen to be vegan. I mean, imagine lumping like all of any other demographic just because they happen to be that demographic. Like unthinkable.
It's almost like it's vegan is veganism is becoming almost an out-group that the media is still allowed to pick on.
Yeah.
Like every other demographic, you get absolutely slammed if you spoke about like that.
Yeah.
But then it's still allowed with veganism at the moment. So
there was a Sydney-based comedian who I've thankfully forgotten their name, but recently they said on like I can't even remember which channel it was, 7, 9, one of those, but they said something like so this is around like the whole Peter thing about changing phrases. Did you guys hear about that? Like don't call it kill two birds with one stone, call it feed two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, that got a lot of like hate by vegans and non-vegans alike. I think, I mean, when someone like refers to, oh, we'll sacrifice a chicken to make sure the weather's good today, like that does upset me a little bit. I think like there is something to say for language. But anyway, so in this segment, the host was saying, oh, we shouldn't call it kill two birds with one stone anymore, and this comedian says, no, we should call it kill two vegans with one stone.
Yeah,
everyone laughed.
That.
You saw, so the audience laughed and applauded, and they went on to crack a few more anti-vegan jokes. And like again, any other demographic, unthinkable. To even joke about.
I'm just plugging it in now in my head. It's actually too despicable to say.
So I wrote to like the management of that studio, and like they did nothing. They were just like didn't even get back to me actually. So it's it's.
See, I never think of that. I almost fall in with the rest of society with these things, you know. Like I almost didn't think that was too bad. Upon first glance, I was just like, it's just a joke. But then, thinking of that, plugging in any other demographic, it would have been despicable to say. Yeah. Which is really interesting how the double standard works there.
Yeah, and then people say vegans have no humor, but I mean any kind of minority group that gets picked on, like people, you know, they say, oh, you got no humor because you're not laughing at like me criticizing you. Like, of course.
You're not kidding.
Sorry, I'll laugh at you saying you want to kill me.
It's pretty much that. Yeah, it's interesting to know where that line is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, even with the two kill birds one stone, that doesn't really affect me. But like when you said that one with the slaughter the chicken, so that the weather's good tomorrow. Is that what?
Yeah, someone said something like that.
I've never heard that one before.
No, because like, to me that's just too graphic. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know. That does hit me a bit, and I'm just yet again where I've got this arbitrary line I think in my head. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on with this topic at all? With Are Vegans Crazy?
Any closing notes?
Yeah, any closing notes?
Couple of things that come to mind. So one is like people talk about farmers getting death threats sometimes from vegans, but I mean I've gotten death threats. Like
really?
So, and like a lot of like activists I know have gotten death threats, and I mean, so for me personally, like I haven't received a credible like threat of violence where I've actually felt in danger, but like people have said they'd like to kill me, and like I know other people who have gotten credible threats of violence. For like it should be never like deserved, but like just for no reason at all, as far as I can tell. And so I think the media loves to talk about farmers getting death threats from vegans. They never cover the other side.
Yeah, that's very true, isn't it?
So there's a bit of bias there, I think. And the other thing is, it's interesting, like with the whole, like, is it normal in society? Like this whole thing, I mean, for men in particular, like most vegans are female. And because there is a bit of a stereotype about you have to eat meat to be strong. And like at a Woolworths once I saw, there's a sign that said real men eat, like ... on top of the meat section. And
oh wow!
Like
really?
So there's a lot of stuff, and then there's this study that suggests like men who would otherwise order the vegetarian meal don't when they're out with their friends because they're worried about like not seeming like a man or being picked on or something.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate. I don't know how we can like address that, but maybe if we can address some of those issues about that whole thing, then maybe that would like make it easier for males and just people in general to be vegan.
I think it's just about normalising it, I think, and just showing like, sorry, just bump the table. Just showing that you can like do stuff like building muscle while vegan, and the more people that are open about being vegan and like bodybuilders powered, all those kind of things, just general people that you know who go to the gym, train, and they're also vegan, that really helps that out. I think helps out that manly vegan thing.
Because when you've got the rise of veganism alongside this almost I see a side of it, but you've got this attack on masculinity at the moment. I think with the society, definitely the toxic masculinity air quotes. There are forms of that which are obviously abhorrent and should be eradicated. But I think masculinity in a way should be preserved, the best bits of it. And I think when you've got veganism rising with that, it's lumped in with that movement, and so you've got the term soy boy. You've got a lot of people, even politicians and people using this term now to lump in effeminate men with veganism and all the rest. It's not doing us any good. But I mean, you got the other side of that. We've all been vegan here for 4 years. Or you 4 years?
4 years, yeah.
We're all for 4 years now. I think we can all agree that it's got so much better in 4 years. So much better. And like, even when I don't get the protein myth anymore, and I think my me packing on a bit more muscles has helped with that a bit. No, by no means muscly, but that's helped a bit. And I think just the general movement of society away from these myths. Yeah. It's still coming up, obviously, media, like we just spoke about, but I think it's just time, and
it'll only get better, I reckon.
Yeah, I hope so.
It's moving in the right direction, just slowly but surely.
Yeah, slowly but surely. Yeah,
and all the new plant-based foods that are coming out as well. It makes it a lot easier as well for people to.
There was that mini documentary that's released every year, the Vegan 2018.
Yeah, the plant-based news one.
Yeah.
I saw that. I love watching that. It's like fills me with
it's uplifting, So if you want to go see that, viewers who are interested, go definitely watch that. Shout out to that. It's a bit more uplifting than the negatives that we spoke about now. But to finish off, kind of ties in with that. Any vegan activists that you follow that you would love people to know about and to see?
I'm trying to think of one that people might not have heard of before. Like, I could refer to like some of the big names, but I won't, because I want to give someone else a shout out. But you put me on the spot a little bit. So one of my friends that's all right. One of my friends in Sydney, Kai Macbeth, who is very involved with Cube of Truth, but also some other forms of like vegan outreach in Sydney. Big fan of his work. I don't know.
Sorry, put you on the spot there.
Hopefully that'll live now. I've watched so many though.
I'll just say one person I'm loving at the moment. The more I watch him as well, it gets better. Earthling Ed.
Yes.
Obviously, he's quite big, especially in England. I think it's just his whole demeanour and the way he's actually going on the news and the way he's tackling, and the way he just presents himself and the way he speaks. I mean, you got that woman next to him. I'm not sure if it's the recent one. She's typically very anti-vegan, and he just pretty much got it to agree with everything he said, because he was just so articulate in his point in the way he described it. And he spoke about veganism in a way that was just so inclusive of the beliefs, the already existing beliefs of the general population. Anti-slaughterhouse, and anti-factory farming. So it was great, and I really like him what he's doing at the moment, because yet again I'm too critical of the way. Certain ways, even some Adelaide activists who have got pretty big names. Some videos they put out now and then, I'm just like, I'm not sure if that was the best way. Obviously, everyone's human, but yet again, it's the lack of evidence with whatever the activism's doing. But personal preferences.
Still have to make decisions on weak data, just doing our best, and then update when we can.
That's it. Well, I think that's a good place to cap it off.
Nice ending point.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. My
really
pleasure.
Appreciate it. It's great to speak to someone who's he's actually doing stuff, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk too. And especially as well versed as you are. And thank you so much, Michael, for coming on board.
Thank you.
Cheers, Michael.
Cheers.